This is WJOU 90.1 FM Huntsville, serving the Tennessee Valley, a broadcast service of Oakwood University, on the web at wjou.org.
Good afternoon and welcome to Second Chance. Second Chance is a weekly talk show that examines a wide range of social issues and seeks to inspire physical, emotional, social, and spiritual healing, believing that God is a God of second chances, and through faith, all things are possible. Second Chance airs live each week from the beautiful campus of Oakwood University and features real people with real issues and offers real answers. And now, here's your host, Kenneth Anderson.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Second Chance radio broadcast. I'm Kenny Anderson, always delighted to be here with you for the broadcast that airs every Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time or thereabouts. It is Sunday, May the 17th, the third Sunday of the month, so we have reached mid-month. And of course, this is graduation season and so many other transitional moments in life. And I once again want to give a big shout out to all of those folks who are graduating locally, nationally, and even internationally, since that's our reach on this broadcast. There are people listening this afternoon on 90.1 FM. We thank you for being a part of our conversation today. For those who are joining us on the internet at wjou.org, we thank you for joining us this afternoon. And of course, those who are on the live stream on YouTube or Facebook on Praise 90.1 FM, we thank you for being part of our conversation today. And if by chance you are listening on the radio or you're on the internet right now, you have the option of hopping over to the live stream on YouTube or Facebook. And again, that's Praise 90.1 FM. We hope that you definitely take advantage of that. We want to remind you once again that the month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month. The theme this year is More Good Days Together, and mental health is personal. What works for one person may not work for another, and that's okay. Finding what works for your mental health can involve trial and error, pauses, and changes as life shifts. The path may look different for everyone, but we all deserve more good days together. Now, you can find free tools and ways to get involved during Mental Health Awareness Month at mhnational.org. mhanational.org, and then put /May, and you get all the great information that I've been getting as part of Mental Health Awareness Month, which happens every April, and we're delighted always to be able to highlight that. My first guest is with me this afternoon, and I know I'm anxious to talk to him. He's probably anxious to talk to me, and so I'm going to bring him in the conversation right now. Anthony Daniels is minority leader for the Alabama House of Representatives, District 53. He was first elected to the House in 2014 and is currently serving his third term. Representative Daniels made history as both the youngest person and the first African-American to hold a position of minority leader in the state. And on May the 8th, he gave the commencement address to the 2026 graduating class at Alabama A&M University, his alma mater and mine. And in addition to that, I learned this, and I'm very excited about this, and very honored about this. He also received during that particular time an honorary doctorate for his tremendous work and investment, not just in the legislature, but to education, community engagement, and so much more. And I couldn't think of a more fitting thing for our representative today. Representative Daniels, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great, Kenny. It's always good being with you, my brother.
Yes, sir. Congratulations, man. I mean, I'm just always excited because for me, it's an alignment of where a person's heart is with the honor itself. And I know your heart is with the people. Your heart is for social justice, civility, and more. And to help people just have a better experience in life, whether it's going to work every day, living in communities, making sure that they get the best education and healthcare and more. And this, I think, this honorary doctorate absolutely represents the investment that you've made in this space for so long. So congratulations.
Thank you, man. I tell people it's certainly an honor to be honored, but I'm the only doctor in my household that can't help you when you get sick.
Well, how's that for perspective, right? Kind of makes it humbling too, right?
Exactly.
That's very good. That's very good. Representative Daniels, these are very trying times, and I didn't want to wait another 2-3 weeks to talk to you about what's going on right now in the state of Alabama and surrounding states like Tennessee, Texas, Mississippi, Virginia, and more with regards to the Supreme Court 6-3 decision to basically strip the last vestiges of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I know that you've been right in the center of this particular dialogue and discussion. And I hope that we can start with just an update on where we are right now with this particular challenge.
Well, we need to be concerned about a lot. Right now, you saw the Supreme Court decision to further gut the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Talking about where we've come from. Since before Reconstruction, there were 4 African Americans, members of Congress from Alabama. After Reconstruction, the first African American elected after the Voting Rights Act was Earl Hilliard, who was elected in 1993. And then you had Archer Davis. And then now you have Congresswoman Terry Sewell. And so all of those years of progress that was being made and protections that have been in place are now being impacted by this Supreme Court. Now, my concern with the entire decision on the Louisiana versus Calais case is that Louisiana and Alabama, it's a totally different case. The cases they're separate and different. Yes, one of the factors is the Voting Rights Act claim that says that you can no longer use race to draw districts or protect African Americans in certain areas. However, the Alabama case was a 14th Amendment claim as well as a VRA claim. And so that's a little bit different than the Louisiana case. And so what I would say to you that right now the decision is in the hands of Clarence Thomas. So to say that I'm hopeful, no, I'm not hopeful. Am I I'm praying about it? Absolutely, I'm praying about it. But for a community and for a people to now decide that we are a post-racial society is just totally off base. Because if we were a post-racial society, then we would not encounter the biases or the racism and all the things that people encounter each and every day, or people would not be judged based upon the color of their skin. Dr. King talked about the content being judged by the content of your character, but I've yet to see that because race overshadows being able to be judged by the content of your character. And case in point, there's a polarization studies that have been done that actually says that 98% people vote 98% based upon race. And so if in fact we have not moved beyond that particular point, then how is it that we have become a post-racial society? We have not. And so for me, for the Supreme Court to make a decision with such short-sightedness on where we are in the South, right? I'm just speaking for the South, for example, something that we live each and every day. Redlining would not be an issue, right? Not having access to capital for minority businesses would not be an issue. And so you're talking about, and the list goes on and on. And so, Kenny, until we decide that who we're gonna bank with and who we're gonna spend our money with, we will continue to be mistreated like this. So it's time for us to step up and only shop with ourselves and our allies. So for me, my response to that, in addition to litigation, is taking this to the streets. You take it to the streets in a different way. You take your money out of their banks. You stop spending money with their businesses. You shop on your own in your community. You let the dollar circulate in your community 18 times before it leaves. You get others that look like you to start businesses of the places that you typically shop at so that we're circulating our money in our own community. Because if you don't want me to have representation, if you don't want me to have my community to be able to have representation that think like them and look like them, then you don't want to have my money either. So we got to send a message. And I'm sick of folks sitting on the sidelines, not saying that, hey, I don't get involved in politics. Well, politics is involving you. It's too late.
This is a very powerful moment for me because this is what Representative Daniels is doing is saying what I say all the time as well, and many other people are echoing now as well. Some have been more invested in that space than others, but this is a time to elevate the conscientious engagement of people who are being marginalized right in front of our faces every single day through legislative actions, through acts of social injustice and more. And the impact is going to be on us. So we don't need to experience these things and then look up and say it's business as usual. It is absolutely not business as usual. And I wanted to, on that point, I was hoping we can get into this space, but Ryan Clark, the former NFL player, said this, and I'm quoting him. He says, look, I'm going to be real with you college black athletes. They need to stop signing with schools in the states that gerrymander districts to block black representation and take their skills and talents for granted. This is in alignment with what you're basically saying, Representative Daniels. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, I'm absolutely in support of that. I think that one of the things that we have to look at is, I'm not sure that I agree with the state perspective because you have HBCUs, especially the most HBCUs within the state of Alabama. And so, while there are people in the state of Alabama, and I will say to Ryan is that while there are people like me that are in the state of Alabama that are fighting each and every day, Representative Hall and others throughout Maryland Lands and others that are fighting each and every day, that we just need to make certain that those athletes are going to the schools that want their business, that don't want to push away their people, that open their enrollments up to their institute for their institutions. But for me, what I've seen that's been very notable this particular time, there are folks that I thought were allies that I don't consider allies anymore. And the reason is because when we're going through this fight, our caucus fight for everyone else's issue. But we have yet to see some of these groups fight for our issue.
Wow.
So that's very telling. And there are people that say that they align with us and they pat us on the back and give us a data boy. But when it comes down to it, I didn't see them in Montgomery. I didn't see them in the streets. I didn't see them out there protesting or doing rallies. And I'm probably not going to see them on Saturday on this National Day of Action. So for me, we are all we have in our allies. And we must not forget that. Because someone is nice to you, watch what they do, not what they say. And where are they in time of indifference? Where are they in challenging times? That's how I judge people, based upon what they do, not what they tell me they're for. And the cowardice acts of individuals that are sitting on the sidelines that say they are for us, but it has shown me what I've already known. But I thought that people will be standing with us that we stand with all the time. Even from a Democratic perspective, Kenny, there are some groups out there. Hey, they didn't show up.
Wow.
There's some candidates out there that didn't even show up that look like you and I. Didn't even get a call from them. Wow. So for me, there are ways to fight now that's a little bit different than the 60s. It's a policy war, but it's a positioning war that's going to require voting like we've never voted for before. And it's going to require us to vet candidates that want our vote way ahead of time to say, where were you when we needed you?
Let me ask you this. That's a great segue, actually, because I love having this conversation. I think it's important, and I've had it lots of times with lots of people, and I'm inspired in some sense with the energy around the conversation, but I never want to walk away without the call to action. And you kind of led into a little bit of that, but I want to really kind of lay into this piece of what is the call of action? What's the call to action for our faith institutions? What's the call to action for our HBCUs and other allies? What's the call to action for civic and social organizations? What's the call to action for people who are being impacted by these kinds of things or want to respond to these kinds of things?
The way you respond to have the greatest impact is economics, number one. But you have to have an economic plan. It cannot be just not shopping at Target, but shopping somewhere else down the street that may not have said that they're not for you, but they've shown you that they're not for you. And so we got to be very deliberate and very detailed on our approach. And it can't be a one-off, and it has to be sincere. The other piece is that we have to start coming together, starting the businesses that we like to patronize, businesses that are similar to the ones that we like to patronize, so that we keep our money within our community or supporting allies, people that have shown that they're allies with us, law firms that are allies with us, businesses that are allies with us. And so I think that this is more than just a Black movement. It's a Black and ally movement, right? And so for me, the other piece is there are 600 some thousand African Americans that don't vote in every election.
Wow.
Our job as a institution, as a church, as a people, is to start communicating with those that don't vote in every election, letting them know that we need them. The other piece, we're going to have to start playing financially in political races as a people. We're going to have to start playing financially because at the end of the day, unless we are at the table, we're going to continue to be on the table. And I think that for us, we need to create our own table and then everybody else can just bring a folding chair. And so for me, that's where I am right now. That's the call to action. The call to action is voting. It's getting people that you have a lot of people that look like you on the ballot this time. In Madison County, you got 3 candidates that are running for judge that are African American. You have someone that's running for tax collector that's African American, right? They may not have the resources to get their message out there is because we've not done a great job as a community of making the investments in them. What we can be doing is taking our time. We can write checks. We can also volunteer to reach out to voters that don't vote in every election.
So there's a lot of work that can be done. And rather than sitting around and being in our feelings about this, we have to be mobilized. We have to get involved. And it's not equal sacrifice even. It's equal service. It's
Amen.
like determine what you need to do. How can you show up in this particular space and time? What are you being called to do? Think about the impact that these decisions are having on your life. And maybe there's specific elements that you want to then address or step into as it relates to this. It needs to be right now, full court press. There's nobody, as you said, Representative Daniels. I'm glad you said it that way. No one needs to be on the bench right now. Everybody needs to be checking out the game plan, asking what their role is, and being fully invested in this process. I want to ask this question because I know that the great civil rights pioneer, Judge U.W. Clemens, has weighed in on this matter with regards to the Supreme Court and its decision on the redistricting efforts in the state of Alabama. And I want to ask about your thoughts about, how important is it for him? I saw Earl Hilliard speak up. How important is for these individuals to speak up in this particular moment? Not that we don't expect them to, but how important is it to hear their voices?
It's extremely important because they are essentially some of the first in their particular positions Hilliard was the first African American elected to Congress since Reconstruction. Or Judge Clemens, who was a federal judge, who was on the bench, and so he's among one of the first to occupy the bench that looked like us. And so I think that what they've endured, encountered in their lifetime in the institutions that they spent so much time in, they can see firsthand where the barriers were when they began, and they can see firsthand where the barriers were when they left. Mm. And so because they've seen the barriers that were put in place, they know that the institution is not strong enough to allow, we don't need it to be from Reconstruction to 1993 again to get our first black congressman. And right now in the state of Alabama, they're trying to take away both our black congressional seats. Mm. So voting has consequences. When you don't vote in the presidential race, you get a president and an administration and a Senate to confirm Supreme Court justices that does not have your best interests at heart. Mm. Mm. When you don't elect a governor or a member of Congress that reflects your values, we have the ability to elect people that's going to be reflective of where our voices will be heard. And so when we sit on the sideline, we're giving up a vote and an opportunity for the other side to continue to do the things they've been doing to keep us down. Yeah. And they are not, they're emboldened right now with this administration. Over 300,000 black women have lost their jobs since 2025. Over 40% of black businesses have gone under and yet to return post-COVID. So we cannot afford to sit on the sideline because guess what? You will be going back to pre-1960s in 2026. Mm.
Mm. That in itself should be frightening. And of course, in my mind, I'm thinking that those of us who have not been connected to history and really have appreciated and valued what the pioneers did for us, the sacrifices that were made, the gains that were accomplished, the ones that have not had a chance to really embrace those things and appreciate those things are at risk of experiencing something perhaps even worse. And it is so important that we be engaged, informed, and engaged in this particular time. There is a primary in the state of Alabama that is scheduled for May the 19th. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. We have, very fortunate to have so many candidates running for governor. But, I'm a little bit, I wouldn't say biased, but as a minority leader and as someone that's the highest ranking Democrat in Alabama, my focus is on results, meaning that who's going to put us in the best position to actually get across the finish line. And when I look at the data and look at the numbers, I have to make decisions based upon I need House seats. And if the candidate at the top has the ability to raise money and put together an organization structure and has demonstrated that, that's who I'm going to be with. So there's no ifs and buts about it. And so at the end of the day, I need people that's going to carry the ticket at the top so that we can meet in the middle. Mm. And I can't meet in the middle if I'm having to fund the top. Mm. It watered down my ability to keep what I have. Mm. And so this election is extremely important. You have a governor's race with multiple candidates. You have a lieutenant governor's race with multiple candidates in it. You have a congressional race with multiple candidates in it. You have legislative races that probably one or two primaries in Madison County. But outside of that, the action is in November. But do not sit on the sidelines on May 19th because you will have the ability to set the tone.
Representative Daniels speaks for so many issues that are at stake in this one primary. Now, we're watching what's happening across the nation, and we're seeing all kinds of things going on. And a lot of people are kind of even, as I hear them sort of hopefully talking about the midterms in November, But it's like anything else, Representative Daniels. How do you eat an elephant? One step at a time. And the one step right in front of us is to make sure you vote, that you show up for the primaries here in the state of Alabama on May the 19th. Now, I understand this is a national broadcast for people listening lots of places. The message is the same wherever you live, that you need to be involved and you need to be engaged in the process. You do not need to be a spectator. You know, I watch people too, Representative Daniels, on social media. They often have opinions, and sometimes those opinions bend in different kinds of ways. And sometimes people are all in, and sometimes people are actually doubting the possibilities that exist within the political system and the structure and the framework right now. But the message that I hear you delivering right now, and I'll let you have the closing word here over the next minute and a half, is that people should exercise their right to vote, and that they should vote in this particular primary as if their very life depended on it.
Because it does. And because this is going to give us the ability, this primary is going to set the tone for Montgomery and for what happens in Montgomery next. A message can be sent at the polls to start forcing the other side to have to be responsive to the people that we represent. Because right now they don't see the need to have to respond because we've not voted at a high level. And so we can use this as an example to send a message, send the first shot before sending the second shot in November.
He is Representative Anthony Daniels. He's the minority leader in the Alabama House of Representatives, serving District 53. And he's been sharing some perspective today on the matter of what is happening within our nation, but even more importantly right now, what's happening in our state, about efforts to gerrymander the vote away from people of color and the potential consequences that has. Representative Daniels, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you doing that. I know you're very busy right now, and I know that you've literally given me 30 minutes of your time. So you are a true brother. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Kenny. Thank you.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
Oh, you too.
We, of course, have a great show lineup today, but I really wanted to set the context for how we move forward in this conversation by having a conversation with Representative Anthony Daniels, who is the minority leader in the Alabama House of Representatives. He represents District 53, and we're so honored to have him as part of that journey in that process. And we're going to keep the ball rolling this afternoon with my next trio of guests who are going to join me at this time, and I'm grateful that they're here with me for this conversation. They look like they're ready. Oh, wait a minute. Batman's here too? I did. Yes. See, you guys that are just listening at 90.1 FM are missing a real treat this afternoon. I tell you all the time, you need to hop over to that live stream on Praise 90.1 FM on YouTube or Facebook and check out the optics of what's going on right now. Batman is making an appearance on my broadcast on this afternoon, but I'll introduce the other guests as well. And I look forward to having this conversation for sure. On yesterday, there was a huge gathering that took place here in the city of Huntsville. It was called He Thrives. And recently I got to meet the curator of that imagined space where men can come together and talk about challenges and issues. And again, as I said earlier, issue calls to action that can perhaps increase and improve the quality of their lives. Joining me this afternoon are three of the many participants who were part of that dialogue. And I really shouldn't say many because this really is a special group. These gentlemen were invited to be there because of the unique ways in which they are operating in their communities and the impact that they're having. And I'm just so glad to have them here this afternoon. I'm going to introduce them alphabetically, last name. Adrian Hargrove, it's Regional Director of the Boys and Girls Club of North Alabama. He's joined me before for a lot of different reasons, and I'm so glad to have him here today, not just because he was on the stage yesterday, because he is a recently published author. Congratulations on that, and welcome back to this platform.
Hey, thank you. Honored to be here as always.
Man, it's great to have you. And I'm just waiting to hear from you guys because I know you got some good stuff to share. Anthony Daniels just kind of fertilized the soil this afternoon, told people there's some challenges. We need to be engaged. We need to be involved. And I know that you guys share with me the notion that this is the same desire we have for men, that they be about the business of being about the business. Lawrence Souffrant is with me this afternoon. Lawrence is the owner of Souffrant LLC, life coach and professional speaker. You're going to look for him on your next platform because he will definitely not just be one of the big brothers on the platform making a big presentation, but he's going to also elevate the space that you're in. Lawrence, how you doing this afternoon?
Man, I can't complain. Today's been a good day, and so I'm just glad for the opportunity. Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep it real again, like I typically do on this show. When people like Lawrence speak, say that again, Lawrence. Just say anything. Say, go away me. Say, Lawrence has that voice that, here I am, 35 years on the radio, and that's the voice I want. And he's got it.
It's crazy because for a long time I didn't like my voice, and I realized, through the years that there's power in being yourself, being authentic, and I shouldn't sound like nobody else. So now I love my voice, right? But it took a while.
Well, listen, I love it too. And taking what you just shared, I've learned to love my voice too and accept that. But man, every now and then this booming baritone will come in and I'll be like, that's the radio voice right there. That's it. Also joining me this afternoon is my bro from another Mo, Lorenzo. Wright is with me this afternoon. He, of course, is the co-curator of the Wright Way 360 Wealth Group. And he, along with his beautiful bride, Sarah, have been on the show many times before. And we always like to have Lorenzo in the room because he just expands the space and makes the space richer when he comes into it. My brother, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm good, Kenny. Appreciate you. Man, I feel larger than life now. When you got to interview, you got to do the intro for me every time. No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Everything's been good, and I'm so happy to be here as usual. Always have a good time with you.
Listen, I want to ask you. I think this is probably a good place to start. How did you learn about He Thrives, and what was the pitch to you in terms of your decision to become involved with it? I'm going to start with, go ahead. Go ahead, Lorenzo.
Oh, I thought you were going to start me. Sorry. That would be presumptuous of me to just jump out there, right? For me, to hear another opportunity to bring men together, as we all know, there's a lot of movement going on, which is a wonderful thing. We're finally catching up with these ladies and the things that they've been doing over the years and seeing that, their groups grow and thrive and build a community within themselves. We're now seeing that as well. And when I heard about He Thrives, I thought this is what we need right now for men to get back together, especially in a time where we have mental health issues. When we start to look at the household and what's happening in society, social media, where it's pushing against the family collective, this opportunity, when it was presented to me, I didn't hesitate because I see it in my own community. I see it in my own family. And even myself, I am subject to certain things that every man is subject to. And sometimes I do feel like I'm on an island. So, even though I have expertise in the financial area and other areas, there are certain things that I still lack. You're not 100% in everything. And that's why I reach out to my brothers, especially your panel here, this awesome panel. They teach me a lot and others do the same. So me being able to get into a room where not only can I give, but I can receive what I need, I'm all for it.
Oh, I love it. Lawrence, what are your thoughts on just what was the pitch for you when you learned about this opportunity and you were willing to step into this space and this opportunity?
Yeah, well, my good brother Adrian hit me up and he told me about it. He's the one that texted me and said, hey, we're looking for somebody to be a speaker for men's mental health. Are you interested? And if you know me, then I'm interested, right? Because mental health is my big thing. I focus on mindset with the emphasis of community building. But I have a heart for men. So when he's talking about men's mental health, I had to hop on because like what Lorenzo was saying, there's so many challenges that we have as men without the space or the forum to discuss those things. And so we feel like we're on an island, and most men feel like they're failing when really they're on par, right? They're actually where they're supposed to be. But because we don't talk about those type of struggles, we don't talk about the process of getting to that next level, we get into our own thoughts, and we feel like we're not doing all that we can do. And so when he said, we need someone to talk and bring that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's my bag. Let's do it.
Very nice. Adrian, you've been on the broadcast before. You've talked a little bit about your ministry to men at Oakwood University Church. You've talked about the Momentum Group that meets on Monday nights. You've talked about your counseling with men and anger management groups and so much more. So you're deeply immersed in this space of I'll say man building, helping us become better in terms of what we're able to do in life, but helping us kind of understand perspectives about things that we experience in life. This had to be a very attractive thing to you. Did you know about it beforehand, or was this your first time learning about He Thrives?
It was my first time. So it actually started with an inbox that I got from Miss Suzanne Hambrick and Todd Simmons. And so this was something that they had been doing in DC. And so they saw some of the things that, we were doing here in our community, and they reached out to me. And so, I had pulled in Chris Robinson and Kent Ballard, and we started hopping on Zooms with them and discussing, okay, well, what is He Thrives? What exactly would you guys be doing? And so once that took place, we were like, okay, so we'll build our team here. And so reached out to Lorenzo, reached out to Lawrence, and, my whole goal is just to continue to bring us all together, in this community, and get tapped into the resources that we have here for men and for brothers, and just for us to all be able to continue to sharpen each other. And, I heard something recently. It said the rising tide lifts all ships, and so the goal is to just, hey, let's all build each other up as much as we can and support each other and just continue to grow.
The way Todd has curated this particular experience, this is not for the masses. This is not a big auditorium with hundreds of people in the room, and they're listening to some dynamic speaker. And then, throughout the day, that's what keeps happening. This is a small, intimate gathering that's really, I think, designed to build connection and also create intimacy, which is something that I think men are beginning to really lean into a little bit more than they ever had before, and recognize the need for that in their lives, and from other brothers, meaning that there's a dependence, there's a connection, there's assurance, there's a support system that comes from men that can't come from any place else because of unique kinds of ways that we experience life. And I want to ask you guys that, you've had this experience now in what I think is I love small groups, by the way. I think that's the way you get the work done. And you have this chance now to stand in front of men to talk. I want each of you to talk a little bit about your message. And of course, I'm not talking about the whole message, but what's essentially the message that you hope to convey when you stand in front of groups like this? I'll start again with Lorenzo.
So for me, I'm always biased because, we teach financial literacy. But my particular message is getting back to the business of running a family. And when folks think about family, they don't think about business. But if you look at the way the family makeup is and how things need to happen, you've got to have a CEO. You've got to have a COO. Sometimes you got to have IT, and you need the yard hands, custodial work, which might be the kids. But nonetheless, for me, getting back to the business of running a family is understanding our roles as men. And finance plays a big part in it. We hear the cliche sometimes about, no finance or no romance without finance. And there, to a degree, that's truthful. Why? Because when there's a strain on finance in the household, everybody feels it. Everybody feels it differently, but everybody feels it. So my focus is making sure that we understand our roles as head of household, understand how finance plays a role in that, and how we have to manage our family in a way that when finances come in, we need to give our money a job. Everybody has to understand the value of a dollar. Everybody has a value for dollars, but they think about it differently. Each person, your wife is going to have a different value, your children's going to have a different value, but everybody has a value. Your goal is to align everybody's value to strategy. So we get back into the business of running a family, and it starts with aligning our finance and creating a strategy for our household so that we can move forward with as minimal stress as possible, because it is a tool and we need to think of it that way as opposed to a barrier, which we see so much in our community.
I love all of that. Adrian, talk to me a little bit about your message. Of course, you're operating again in lots of different spaces, and your total hope is that men will be fertilized and nurtured and grow. But talk about the message as you think about, I'm standing in front of a group of men and I'm going to speak to them about something. What's a good target area and focus for you?
I think for me, I think with men, we always hear, what we need to do and why we need to do it. But my goal is to really bring brothers like Lorenzo and Lawrence and other professionals like yourself and say, how do we do that? And I think, again, so much is like, men, you need to do this, you need to do that. Okay, how do we do it? We get all this information, and then what do we do with it? So we hear you got to get your money right. You got to get your finances in order. You need to be better at mental health. And it's like, well, okay, well, how? And so my goal is to, since I don't know how to do all that stuff, is bring in, again, just be that connector, be that person. I almost want to be the go-to guy. Some of the men can call me and say, hey, Adrian, I need help with this. And I know a guy. Let me connect you with, my brothers that I trust, so that we can make sure we're getting better. So again, not just saying what we need to do or why we need to do it, but actually connecting brothers to resources to do it how we need to do it.
And Lawrence, you've already kind of, I think, maybe tipped your hand a little bit, talking about your focus on mindfulness and just having that strong ability to be able to operate in that space. What's your basic message to men?
So my basic message is actually not basic. It for me is really deep, because it's a step that we always skip. And like what Adrian said, we talk about what to do. We need to talk about how to do. I deal with how to be, because what does it even mean to be a man? There's things that men do, but what is the being of manhood, right? And so I like to dive into that. And I'm hoping that the brothers took away this understanding that everything that you do flows from your being. You don't have to really teach a dog how to bark. That's what it does. Birds have to get the strength to fly, but they're already built to fly, right? And so as men, we're constructed a certain way, but we've disconnected from who we are because we've been focusing on what we have to do instead of connecting to who we are. And so my overall message for men is to acknowledge what it means to be a man in general, and then to connect with the man that you are, so that your doing is in alignment with your being.
Let's talk about myths for a minute, because people have a lot of ideas about, it's kind of speaking to Lawrence's comment, it's pretty powerful, by the way. Let's talk about myths and men. Think about a myth about manhood or being a man that you hear, or that you have perhaps witnessed, maybe. People, acting out in a certain kind of way. So think about a myth for a moment, and then I want you to think about one that you can debunk. It's just not true.
Yeah. Well, I'll go first because I'm already here, right?
Yeah.
And shameless plug, I got a course called Laws Restoring Masculinity, where I kind of really break all of this down. It's an 8-module course. It's extremely powerful. And I deal with, the energies and all of that other stuff. But one of the myths that I think we can all agree with is that men don't have emotions, or they lack emotional intelligence. That is probably the biggest myth. And so when I'm coaching, or within my course, when I talk about cultivating masculinity and all that, I actually also deal with the managing and the acceptance of your emotions. and how to not allow them to get in the way, but how to also create safe spaces for expression. Because here's the truth, Kenny. There was a movement back in the day where they said boys don't cry, and we all knew that that was a lie, right? But then we enter into a space where a lot of boys are just crying, and that doesn't work neither, right? So there has to be a way to express. Listen, it is 100% okay to cry. Shout out, you can shout out your book, Adrian. It's okay. It's okay for men to cry, but we have to be socially aware of where it's safe to cry, because unfortunately society will judge you based off of your ability to show up in a stoic way. That doesn't mean we can't be strategic and have the communities and have the coach or have the therapy, have the mentor where it's 100% safe to cry, so then you can get back to business, right? So men have emotions. We get hurt. You call us ugly, it might hurt us. You know what I mean? You say we suck, it might hurt us. And even if we don't show it, these emotions are very, very real. So this myth that men don't have emotions, that's a lie.
Yeah. Yeah, men should have the courage to cry. That sounds like a great title for a book, by the way. I don't know. Adrian, what do you think?
Oh, I love it. I completely agree. And I say, to Lauren's point too, is like, we shouldn't whine. But, if you got to cry, you cry. And, again, you get support, from your brothers or your family, who, wherever that might be. And then you get back on your horse and you keep going. So again, I agree completely that there's a myth that we might not have emotions or something might not hurt our feelings because, oftentimes we might feel like no one cares. So it's no point in me sharing my emotions, and maybe to not use the exact one Lawrence used, but maybe saying that we don't communicate or we don't want to communicate. Where in actuality, we just communicate differently. I might be able to say something in 10 words that it might take somebody else 100. And, I think that comes from us wanting to be more efficient at times and more effective and like, okay, let's get to the point. Not necessarily that we don't want to communicate, but I agree with Lawrence as well that, either we don't feel or we don't have emotions or we don't like to talk or we don't like to communicate. I think those are some myths, as well as, again, the reason that we did this event and the other events that we do is to provide opportunities for men to share those emotions and those feelings and get to the heart of it. And then also, again, give them the tools to do it the right way. And that's my plug for the right way.
No pun intended.
That's my alley-oop. That's my oop.
Yeah, I love it.
Take it away.
And I'm going to echo on my brothers. I think the biggest issue for us as men in facing this society is that we're either labeled as not in touch with our emotions, or we're not allowed to show our emotions. And just kind of echoing what they said, being able to cry, just going off a personal experience for me. The last time I cried on camera, it made it on every news station in the country. That just goes to show. That just goes to show how it's deemed so. Oh my God, he cried. We're not allowed to move within that space. And then if you do move within that space a certain way, they say you're moving in your feminine, your feminine energy. So it's kind of, where do you find that balance? Where's the safe space where I can be a man and still have feelings and express them in a way that I'm not going to be judged or made or given, lessen my demeanor. We need more of that. And being part of this conference and being able to learn different ways that we can operate in how we are to be as men, or how we can be as men, so that we're not feeling like, as it was said earlier, that we're sitting on an island by ourselves when actually there are others in the same position. So I think that's a big issue for our community as men, being able to show our emotions. But at the same time, for a lot of men, they've never been allowed to. So they don't know how to. And when you find yourself in that situation, then you run into what my brother Lawrence does when you're talking to men and you're worried about suicide rate, which is going up. That's especially within our Black community. Those are the type of things that we need to curb so that young men understand they're not in this boat alone. they're old, as they call us, old heads. We go through it as well, but we were taught a different way to handle it. And that's what creates those generational traumas that we need to break. So I appreciate my brother Adrian for giving me a copy of his book, because I absolutely want to cry, especially with the way things have been going lately, but I know it's okay to cry, and that's the important part.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I don't always do this jumping on my own question, but I'm going to jump in on this question because this particular myth, and I'm calling it a myth, I'm calling it out today as a myth because it absolutely annoys me to no end. And it's the myth that men are afraid of commitment.
Mm. That's a good one.
I mean, and I'm not saying there aren't some that are, but I know too many that aren't afraid of commitment.
Right.
And they've leaned into commitment and they've walked through commitment and they are committed, It is amazing how I think that narrative came from somewhere, and I could probably speculate as to where it came from. I think there was a period of time where, we saw the deconstruction of families and we saw this whole notion of guys being dogs and that kind of thing. And so that narrative kind of hijacked the notion of the man that I knew, my dad, Jack Anderson, married to my mother for 32 years before he died of a heart attack. That was commitment.
Yeah.
And those were the examples. I saw the example of commitment. I witnessed it. And again, someone would challenge me, perhaps say, well, that's not the example I saw. All I'm saying is this: our outcome is not predicated only by what we see. It's also driven by the narrative. If the narrative is stronger than the reality, that's what people may follow. So the myth of commitment for me about guys, I absolutely abhor that. Oh, God, she's not committed. No, wait a minute. Maybe we're contextualizing that in a way that really doesn't honor the fact that there are a lot of brothers out there that embrace commitment. And, are women any less committed now because they're getting married later?
Well, let me jump in, Kenny. Hold on, if you don't mind, because I'm a be all right. So if y'all know anything about me, I'm the one that likes to say the things nobody wants to say, right?
Say it.
And this idea that men are afraid of commitment is really for the counterpart to avoid accountability in the context they're creating in the relationship.
Ooh.
In other words, they're expecting the man to do all the work while they receive all the benefits. And so who would ever take that deal? It's just a bad deal. Because the ones who are committed finds a person who invests just as much as they do, and they're locked in. But when you're dealing with someone who doesn't want to invest, who wants to take, and whenever there's a problem, it's always your fault. It's never their fault. They can never do any wrong. Who's going to commit to that? I'm gonna just call it out for what it is, right? It's not that men are afraid of commitment. Men have wised up and realized marriage doesn't determine my social status, and I don't have to spend the rest of my life being in a scenario that really doesn't build me and help me. I didn't say serve me. I said it doesn't build me. It's not helping me grow. So no, I'm not going to commit to that. If you want to have fun, we could just have fun. I'm looking for those who are builders like myself. And I've been married for 18 years with my queen for 20 because she's a builder like I am.
Thanks.
Here. Man, that's
here to that.
There you go. Hey guys, look, we got about 3 minutes. I'm gonna give each you about a minute to celebrate your platform and let people know how they can connect with you and learn more about what you got going on. I'm gonna start with Adrian.
All right. Facebook, Instagram, Adrian Hargrove on both. And get the book, The Courage to Cry. It's going to be on Amazon. I should have the link up today. I just spoke with my editor this morning, so we should be up and running, but I do have copies on hand. If you reach out to me, I can get one to you.
Okay. If you reach out to me, where?
Facebook or Instagram, Adrian Hargrove. Adrian Hargrove.
Look, don't make people. Don't make it hard for people to find you.
beginning. I said that when I started, but yeah, I repeat.
You have to repeat.
I repeat.
See, I'm gonna have to work. Adrian
He
knows
coaching me.
this is
He
what
coaching
I do
me in
for
real
him.
time. This is one of my coaches. He coaching me in real time.
Listen, man, you got wait.
You know,
Okay, so after Lawrence, who's going to be the last person that speaks again, I want Adrian to come back and say it one more time, brother. You just published the book, The Courage to Cry. Hang on one second.
get your copy, Kenny. There it is.
This is teamwork, brother. We got to make that dream work. Look, this is Adrian D. Hargrove on it. I thought you'd have one in the back like this. I thought every time you said something, you go, well, when I talk to men, you gotta, look, I know I'm being funny about it, but
I got you. I know
you know what I'm saying, man.
Yes,
look, you gotta listen. But there's no shameless plugs as far as I'm concerned when you got something that people need to know about. Yes, you just plug. That's another false narrative. Yeah, people, I don't want to give a shameless plug. No. Plug away. Because there's so much noise in the world today that people can hear stuff from. They got to make decisions about stuff, and they got to really make choices. Adrian Hargrove, this brother right here, who's the regional director of the Boys and Girls Clubs of North Alabama, wrote this book, The Courage to Cry. You need to purchase it. And you can reach him on Facebook at Adrian Hargrove. You can reach him on Instagram at Adrian Hargrove. What's your phone number? What's your email address? Drop it in the chat. Everybody needs to know about what's going on. Lorenzo, what you got going on?
Hey. All right. So Lorenzo, right again. The Right Way 360. There's my plug right up there. The Right Way 360. TheRightWay360.com. We're at The Right Way 360 on all platforms: Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, you name it. I think my wife's made us. We're TikTok famous, as they would say. I believe. We have a lot of fun out there. We show folks that part of having a financial plan together, you can also have fun as a family. So we try to thrive as the 360 lifestyle, as we say it, in all aspects of life. So you can reach us on all platforms there. And just dropping my plug, we've got the Student Wealth Playbook.
There we go.
Just recently dropped the Family Wealth Playbook, and each of these plays on the different aspects of life. So you start off as a student in college, we help you get your finances together with some basic knowledge, information. Once you transition out of college into that early adolescence, moving into a family life, you move into the Family Wealth Playbook, which teaches you how to set. Look, come on, brother. I'm talking about the Family Wealth Playbook, which gives you some tips to take it to the next level. So we build wealth, maintain it, protect it, and then pass it on.
I love all of it. Lawrence, you wrap it up for us.
All right. Well, for now, I'm concentrating on my YouTube channel. It's Lawrence Souffrant. You look me up, youtube.com/@Lawrence Souffrant. You will find my channel. I have a course.
Spell your last name.
SOUFFRANT. So that's Lawrence Souffrant. That's also my handle for IG. So check that out. TikTok, I have a course called Restoring Masculinity. You go to www.lawrencesouffrant.com and it will direct you to the website so you can register for the course, Restoring Masculinity. And my calendar is open for speaking engagements as far as workshops, conferences, etc., etc. I focus on mindset, focus on community, focus on manhood, focus on families. I do it all that's related to community. So you can email me at booking@lawrencesouffrant.com if you're interested in booking me for a speaking engagement.
All right, Adrian.
Again, my name is Adrian Hargrove, author of The Courage to Cry, which you can find on Amazon this week. But for now, you can find me on Facebook at Adrian Hargrove, as well as Instagram at Adrian Hargrove. So look me up, get to me, and let's get you a copy in your hands.
All right, guys, it has been an amazing conversation. We just need to get back together from time to time, man, and just kind of chop it up, man. You guys got some good stuff to share, great energy on the platform, and I always call people like this when they're listening to the show. I call these guests platform elevators because they help to elevate my platform when they come on because of the rich depth of knowledge and experience that they share. And that has been exactly what has happened today. Lorenzo Wright, Lawrence Souffrant, Adrian Hargrove, thank you so much for what you have invested in this space today.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Kenny. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. See you soon, guys.
All right.
All right. Now.
All right. He Thrives took place just yesterday right here in the city. Those were 3 of the presenters. There were many more, but we wanted to kind of unpack some of that experience with those brothers. And that, of course, was a great thing to be able to do. I'm going to come back in just a moment with more of the broadcast. I'm Kenny Anderson. It's Second Chance. I hope that you're having an amazing afternoon.
You're listening to Second Chance with Kenny Anderson.
Welcome back to the broadcast. I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Adrian Hargrove, Lawrence Souffrant, and Lorenzo Wright this afternoon, reflecting on the big seminar that took place yesterday, the gathering, the Fellowship of Men. It's called He Thrives. Took place right here in Huntsville, Alabama, and those were 3 of the presenters. We're glad that they had a chance to come on and talk and share. It is Sunday, May the 17th, and I'm so honored that you've taken this time to be here with us today. If you're listening at 90.1 FM, welcome. If you're listening at WJOU.org, welcome. And if you happen to be on a live stream and you haven't gotten over there yet, perhaps, we invite you to join us on the live stream at Praise 90.1 FM on Facebook as well as YouTube, because that's an opportunity to actually check out the visual optics of the broadcast on today. My next guest I'm about to introduce right now is the author of a book. He's written several books, but this is one of the books, Subdue the Enemy Under Your Feet, Eliminating Spiritual Strongholds that Hamper Your Health, Money, and Relationships with God and Others. Darien Claxton is a bilingual native of Washington, D.C. with roots in Trinidad and Tobago. He is a speaker, author, podcaster, mentor, men's ministry leader, church elder, business owner, and counsel with over 15 years of experience equipping churches, organizations, and leaders with principles on identifying and overcoming spiritual strongholds in practical ways that improve physical and mental health, finances, work productivity, ministry impact, and relationships with God. Through his digital marketing agency, Claxton Solutions Incorporated, he and his team have helped dozens of pastors, ministry leaders, and entrepreneurs of faith create, promote, and publish devotionals, books, and digital offers to expand their online influence and transform lives for Christ on an exponential level. He also founded Bending Bowls of Bronze, a ministry dedicated to empowering believers to go from passive to aggressive, defensive to offensive, and spiritual warfare, utilizing devotionals, audiobooks, and video resources, webinars, and so much more. I'm so glad to have him back on the platform, Second Chance. I'm welcoming once again Darien Claxton. Darien, how you doing this afternoon?
My man, Kenny, good to see you. Good to see you, man.
It is great to see you too. We got a chance to vibe a little bit doing Alumni Weekend Homecoming 2026 edition at our alma mater, Oakwood University, just a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And we got a little taste of what was happening with you, but we wanted to have a much more expanded conversation. So I'm so glad you were able to get back on the broadcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seemed like a flash. We were in and out, and we didn't even get to beyond the surface. We like scratched a few skin cells off the face. So looking forward to getting deep.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Just real quickly, I know you've had a chance now to reflect on the visit to Oakwood during those few days and the homecoming energy that was a part of the space that people were in. What's your general sense of how you felt being in that space again?
So thankfully, we've been there for the past 3 years because we have 2 of our kids there now. We have a freshman, my freshman son, and my oldest is a senior. She has another year because she spent a year in Spain. And prior to that, we had not been back to Oakwood for alumni. It had been at least 10 years. So seeing how it has evolved, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I still say there's no better place. I have my complaints. I have my issues. My wife has her issues. We've been very close with our ears to the ground regarding some of the issues that have happened on campus. But I mean, if you are somebody who has not had the Oakwood experience and all you have is a social media layer, you're missing out on what's really happening behind the scenes. Every school is going to have tons and tons of issues. You're going to have pockets of resistance to your kids' faith. There are going to be distractions, but that's anywhere you go. And so I'm very thankful to be able to see the progress that the institution has made, even as they deal with new challenges that we didn't have. I was there in the late 90s, early 2000s. There's always going to be new challenges, but I'm thankful that we have an Oakwood University so that our children can be better equipped to fight this spiritual battle.
And one of the things I always reflect on when I think about challenge is that I think about the opportunity for growth. Where there's no challenge, there's probably very little growth, or perhaps no growth in some situations. And so I welcome those things as a person who's been in management and leadership. It's never an easy ride, but I think that's part of the journey. You learn things about yourself and you learn how to move into those particular experiences and situations and prayerfully, hopefully come out better on the other side. I mentioned earlier that you are the author of a book and other books as well, but the most recent book that we spoke about a little bit was Subdue the Enemy Under Your Feet, Eliminating Spiritual Strongholds that Hamper Your Health, Money, and Relationships with God and Others. And I want to focus on that today. But I always talk to authors about the journey towards becoming a published author and what that experience was like. A friend of mine recently said, I believe everybody has a book inside of them that's just waiting to come out. So talk to me about what your journey was like to get to your first book.
I have someone that's lamented the fact for years prior to writing my first book in 2022 that I was an author who had never written a book. Wow. I was somebody that has always been a good writer. It's always been natural for me. And here it is. This is this talent, this light that I'm hiding under a bushel. And so God had been needling me for some time. I'd been in this warfare ministry at that point for probably 5 years. And there was a wealth of experiences and practical information that I was holding onto on the inside, primarily because I was paranoid about my church members learning about what was happening behind the scenes. And I'll tell the story a little bit later about how we had a witch in our church. And so I'm always like, let me just kind of talk in vague terms. And obviously writing a book, it's permanent, right? It's something that's there for, you can't change it after it's been out there, right? And so I've been resisting the spirit. And so I had an opportunity to do several of these online Bible studies. Of course, this is during the pandemic. And this one particular study I did in 2022, I did not even plan for all of these topics, all of these principles to come from the book of James. There were probably about 10. I was doing these slides and I see, wait a minute, there's so many that are coming from the book of James. And this is where God speaks to me. This is this principle that everybody has a book inside of them. And it is God that's going to say, hey, okay, now it's time. I probably could have written it a few years prior, but now there's no excuse. So now I see all of these frameworks from the book of James. And so he inspires me to write a devotional. And this is something that I teach and I preach. I was like, if you have no idea how to proceed, you got a concept, but you're like, how am I going to flesh this out in the book? Devotional makes it very, very straightforward. So this is a book that probably, Kenny, should have taken me 2 months at most to write, right? Because once you have one framework, you have your devotional, so it's got a key text, it's got maybe an anecdotal story, it's got some meat, it's got a case study, it's got maybe some action items, and it's done. And now you wash, rinse, and repeat that over the course of 21 days, 30 days, however long you're supposed to have this book, however long you want the devotional to be. And brother, I procrastinated. We had so much that was going on in our lives. And you find that when you step out into intention, disruption will follow. One of my good mentors, Myron Golden, always says that when disruption follows intention. So I had this intention. I now have a framework. I know I can sit and write this book And now life gets in the way, and my wife ends up losing her job, wrongfully terminated. We ended up bringing in our godchildren, and we had so many issues. So I'm like, let me focus on getting the money right, getting the business right, doing all these things, and the book can, at some point, it's going to get written. Well, Kenny, I found that obedience is better than sacrifice, and disobedience will lead to unintended sacrifice, right? So after things getting monumentally worse, right? I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just be obedient and do what I'm supposed to do and put the I wouldn't say pen to paper. I was doing it on my computer, obviously. And there was a blessing on the other side. 1 year later, doing what I should have done back in 2022, so many opportunities opened up. And the very thing that I was running from and the very things that I was afraid, and I was working by my might and my power to bring about some resolution, transformation for my family, the book opened up that door. So the process for me was being obedient and then allowing excuses to be the fuel. So wait, I don't have a publisher. I'm going to use Amazon and self-publish. Well, Amazon's going to take all this money from me. Well, I'm not going to promote Amazon. I'm going to do it on my website. And the same strategies that God gifted me with to promote other people and their offers, I could use for mine.
What has been the journey since you became an author, and how many books do you have now?
I have 5. So the first book that I wrote ended up being a 60-day devotional, and it was a great experience. I realized, you know what, that's a long book. I first got it when I got the first proof from Amazon. I think it's like this thick. I'm like, God, nobody wants to read a 350-page devotional. So I ended up splitting that into 2 devotionals. And so you have Teaching Your Hands to Make War, and you have Arm with Strength for Battle. And then in 2024, I was going to write the third portion of that. And I ended up preaching a sermon called Spiritual Glaucoma. I use these AI images of David. All my books are about David and Saul. That's like one of my favorite narratives. And it was so compelling. And of course, back then, AI was a new concept for many people. And so now you see these Black characters of David and Saul, and all these eyes are on, and people are like, yo, is that from a movie? I said, no, that's the sermon I put together. He said, you should have a book on it. So I wrote a book based off of the sermon. And then most recently, I published the book that you referenced. But in the interim, I also did a Spanish version of the first 2. Yo hablo español con fluidez. So I was like, let me make sure that I have my Spanish brothers and sisters taken care of. So that's the 5 books. And I see that, as you mentioned, not only is there a book inside of all of us, and I think I mentioned it during our live broadcast, when you write a book, when God has called you to write a book, the first person who's going to be transformed by it is you. So yes, you're writing it for somebody else. Yes, you're writing for the experiences and the wisdom that God has given you to empower somebody else. But you are just a tool in the hand of the master. And so you are the person, you're reading this book. And if you have submitted to God's voice, then you're like, whoa, this is transformational for me and what I'm going through. So
yeah. I got to ask you, what attracts you to the story of David and Saul, their lives, their experiences, and what draws you into that space?
So I was listening, I caught the tail end of your previous interview with Adrian. I actually have his book too, by the way. I'm a men's ministry leader, right? So just like Adrian, just the other guys. And David is so relatable as men. David, matter of fact, is the character in the Bible we see the most information on besides Jesus. Because think about it, you have his story in 1 Samuel, you have it in 2 Samuel, you have the parallel version in 1 Chronicles, and you get a couple chapters of 1 Kings. So you have chapter after chapter of all of these sagas that go beyond David and Goliath. Like there's about 15 really good narratives that are better than any TV show that's out there. Of course, now they have a TV series on it that really encompass the lives, things that men deal with. But then we also see the prayers he was praying in about at least 60 Psalms were written by David. So we have the action side and we see what he did, but now we see here is the spiritual warfare he was engaging in behind the scenes. So when you think about men and dealing with temptation, dealing with the anxiety about your inability to provide, dealing with failure, dealing with the need for validation. That's what David dealt with when you think about his surrogate father, Saul. And you think about the accountability, the power of accountability, having a Jonathan in your space, even having somebody like a Joab who can be giving you some tough love, right? There's so much we can glean from it. So I always tell my church, I'm one of the elders in my church, I'm like, they're going to stop asking me to preach, because anytime I preach, I'm going to preach from 1st and 2nd Samuel. I'm always going to talk about David. Every book that I have is going to have that in there. And there is a relatable set of stories that we can just pull back the layers of the onion and realize, hey, he wasn't moving in a vacuum. Hey, he wasn't completely fearless. Here is the spiritual armaments that he was wielding to be able to bring about those results, to where we see he has, Kenny, 60 plus battles we read in the Bible. He did not lose a single one of them. That's amazing. I want to live that kind of life when it comes to my spiritual battle.
Wow. That's amazing. And that's absolutely right. Let's talk about Subdue the Enemy Under Your Feet, eliminating spiritual strongholds that hamper so many elements of our lives that have the capacity to derail us in ways that can be counterproductive to our journey in life. What was the motivation for that particular topic? And then what do you hope people get from the experience of reading the book?
I've been often accused, especially on social media now, of over spiritualizing things. Everything, Darien, everything ain't all spiritual. Everything isn't all demonic activity. Everything isn't all how you pray. There are things that just happen, right? So when we're struggling in our marriages, that's a normal thing, right? Yes, we got to pray for our marriage and this and that, but there are just things that happen. Yes, we know that there are demonic forces at work that might in the corners of third world countries affect our finances. But at the end of the day, it's mismanagement. It's the job that you get. It's how well you can close the deal. So we tend to compartmentalize our faith and say that the spiritual aspect of what we do is this little box here. The things that are outside of our control. We're praying for somebody who's sick and the doctors have done everything they can. Let's go ahead and pray for them. Right? We have an untenable financial situation. No matter how hard we work, we're not going to get the money. Okay, now, God, we give up. Let's go ahead and pray. Right? But anything outside of that, God has given us wisdom in that mindset to be able to navigate on our own. So this book was born out of the realization that, number one, spiritual problems require spiritual solutions. Number two, that everything is spiritual, even what we would consider to be a physical problem. We can take action, right? I can pray and then do something that you would consider to be physical, to be normal, right? But God's getting the glory in that decision. And number three, it was a challenge for me, Kenny, to get transparent, because none of the previous books had I told any real stories about the people that I'd counseled, the demonic activity that we'd encountered, the infiltration that was happening at a high level. I was, again, filled with fear, which I acknowledge is one of the weapons. We have a whole framework that we use in all of the books, the 12 weapons of God. 6 are offense, 6 are defense. And then for each of them, there is a counterfeit that Satan has put together. So you have 6 aggressive, 6 passive, and 6 interchangeable. Now you got 666, right? And so all of these I'm utilizing in the books, but from a very academic standpoint. And people are like, oh, it's such a blessing. And I love all of that. But God was like, for us to be able to really achieve spiritual victory, those of us in positions of influence and leadership in the church, we cannot be quiet about what we know about the enemy, even if it means making ourselves exposed, being uncomfortable about sharing things that were happening. I always change the names, right? But if somebody was aware, if somebody was in one of those churches, they probably could put the pieces together and figure out. People have reached out to me, wait a minute, that sounds like this situation. And I have to be the kind of person that's going to allow God to use a real experience to make someone realize this is not just academic talk. These are real things that are happening. And when I realized that the spiritual roots to problems in our finances and our relationships and our health, it would be spiritual malpractice for me to continue to stay at an academic level and not get practical and real with this. So that's what this book is. It dives into some real stories. Pretty much every one, I'm telling real stories that now apply to the case studies we see in the exciting story of David. And now there's some real action items people can take at the end of each day.
So a lot of what you just shared in the context of how you have shaped these thoughts and concepts and ideas that you're giving to people to ponder and consider actually speaks to the power of the narrative. And I always am inspired by understanding that the space that I might be in is really a person's first person testimony. And, you know, we know that the word of God says that we overcome through that process. And it is so liberating when a person is able to free themselves from the natural things that occur if I, you know, mess up in some way or another, and to be able to speak that truth of how God has redeemed me, saved me, delivered me from that thing. The power of the narrative is extremely important. And I suspect that that's a big part of your thinking in terms of how you have crafted this document, this publication that you've given to people. You're not academically speaking to people per se. You're allowing people's first person testimonies to speak to them through powerful narratives. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's even a space for anecdotes and following Jesus' prescription, parables that might not be real stories, but people can see themselves in that story. So if I'm going to be speaking a very complex principle and I go right into it, people will be lost, number one, or number two, even if they find it transformational, it's harder for them to remember. But nobody in the audience would forget the parable of the sower. Yeah, all those farmers in the audience, right? Nobody forget the parable of the first and the last, which was actually an existing parable at that time. So Jesus would take stories that were familiar with the rich man and Lazarus. That was a real story that he gave a twist to. So we know that I remember as Andy Enriquez, he always says, you never tell a story without making a point, and you never make a point without telling a story. So we know the people are going to be transformed by stories, and that's in a vacuum, of course. But now when you make it personal, you say, this is not just a made-up story. This is not just an anecdote where you can be the relatable character in which you're going through. These are real experiences. So when I share some things that are difficult to understand in terms of, or not even understand, difficult to believe, how can a Christian be demon-possessed? How can somebody who claims to be a follower of Christ be actually aligned with the evil one? How can these things be happening behind the scenes within an institution that preaches righteousness by faith and preaches about the power of the word? And so once I bolster the story of what I was seeing behind the scenes with all of these other supplemental stories of people who had difficulties, people who started coming to me as an inexperienced elder who had never done spiritual warfare before, they're coming to me asking me about, how do I get rid of these voices in my head? And how do I deal with these people who are these apparitions that are appearing? Retelling those stories with real narratives starts to kind of push back against the suspension of disbelief, that suspension of belief that people might engage in when you hear just one story.
Yeah. We've got maybe about 5 minutes left, but I wanted to back up just a little bit for something. And I think, at least to me, this is extremely important. Because the title of the book, Subdue the Enemy Under Your Feet, I think speaks to something that as humans, we have a natural tendency to do. And that is to fix our own problems. To be confronted with something in life and think that we have the answer to it. And leaning on our own might and our own strength and our own resources. But I suspect that within the context of this title, Subdue the Enemy Under Your Feet, there's something that goes far beyond our abilities to be able to fix our problems. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Most of us feel like we are being subdued. We feel like we are reactive. The enemy is, and you look at the news, it looks like the enemy has complete control of the chessboard. He's the one who's leveraging these attacks, and not even just attacks. We see in the administration doing crazy things. We see these wars that are happening. But even in our personal lives, we are just kind of moving as the trials come. We're just taking the blows. And Kenny, we've even got to the point where we have spiritualized poverty. We have spiritualized a lack of health in our relationship. Well, that's just part of me suffering as a Christian. And so I'm supposed to cower. I call it the bomb shelter versus the battering ram syndrome. I'm supposed to cower in a bomb shelter. That's the four walls of my church, and kind of let these blows be rained upon me. And then eventually when Christ comes back, he's going to sanitize everything. He's going to rescue us, right? So that we just have to accept the fact that the enemy is going to have these trials rained against us, period, right? But the battering ram mindset lets us know that God called us to be offensive, to subdue, to have the dominion that Adam abandoned in the Garden of Evil. And because it was abandoned, Satan picked it up. But we have the authority through the sacrifice of Christ to pick that up. So we understand that there are two kingdoms. You have the kingdom of God and the kingdom of Satan. And so when Jesus says, I believe in Matthew 16, he says that on this rock, talking about himself, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Most of us think that that is our duty as church members, is to not allow the hell's onslaught to prevail against the church. So again, we just got our hands up, just all right, come on, God, save us. But the gate is a defensive structure, right? And so if the kingdom of Satan, hell, has gates around it, they are designed not to attack us, but to keep us as God's people out. And so when we attack, when we allow our battering ram mindset to be offensive in our warfare against the kingdom of Satan, we have the promise that our church, our onslaught, will not be stopped by the gates of hell. They will not be able to keep us out. So our duty is to set the captives free and to bring about deliverance and to march into the house of the strong man, bind the strong man, take his possessions for the glory of God. And that might look like our resources, our finances, our relationship might look like other individuals who we are called to intercede on behalf of and not just sit by and just worry about our issues. We are called to be that rising tide that lifts all boats through the power of Christ.
Very, very powerful indeed. Tell people where they can connect with you and where they can find a copy of your publications.
Absolutely. Everything is at bendingbowsofbronze.com. I actually got that from the Bible. When I first wrote this book, I was going to call it Weapons of Our Warfare. And I got to the end of the book and I realized that there's a zillion books with that title. It's like, God, I need a title. And he sends me to 2 Samuel 22, which is a parallel of Psalm 18. And it says, you teach my hands to make war. With your power, I can bend a bow of bronze. So that's what the ministry is called, bendingbowsofbronze.com. I also have my personal site, DarienClaxton.com, where I can be booked for speaking engagements, for trainings, for corporate events. You can also get my books there, but that's primarily to book for speaking engagement, because I believe this transcends just pure ministry. It goes into business and into academics. Satan is not specific in where he attacks. Every aspect of our lives, we have to have spiritual awareness, spiritual instruction, spiritual principles to break these chains, to bend bows of bronze, rain that damage against the enemy, subdue the enemy under our feet, and fight to win for the glory of God.
I absolutely love that, and I have been absolutely inspired by our conversation. I look forward to having additional conversations. So it's clearly there's a lot to unpack in terms of the work, the ministry, and the path that you're on right now, Darien. Hold on one second, because I'm going to bring my next guest in, because I actually think you know this person. And she, of course, a big smile. Notice I said, you know this person. Big smiles broken on both of their faces. She is my next guest, and she is actually the wife of Darien Claxton. She is Naomi Claxton. She, too, is an author. Her book is For His Glory, Disclosing and Destroying the Spiritual Roots of Codependency. I'm excited about talking about this today. But before I ask Darien to move on for his day, I thought I would bring Naomi in so that at least they could say, what's up? Darien, thank you so much. I appreciate you, man. And we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Take care. Thank you.
All right. Naomi Claxton, Esquire, has built a diverse career in the legal field and now works in-house as a managing associate general counsel for a nonprofit organization where she oversees legal operations for 2 business units. She, too, is a former student at what was then Oakwood College back in our day, and is today Oakwood University. And I got a chance to connect with her and Darien doing the homecoming meeting that we had just a few weeks ago. And it was good to be able to do that on this platform. Because of that conversation, I said we need to have an expanded conversation. And so here we are today. Naomi has served in various roles in the church, including Sabbath school teacher, education leader, adventurer teacher. She's an elder, has been an elder, and most recently women's ministry leader. And the list goes on and on and on. They've been married for 16 years, and they currently live, as I said, in the Washington, D.C. area, and they have 5 kids. And of course, that is just a beautiful thing indeed. Naomi, how are you doing this afternoon? Are you on mute? I'm not hearing you. So let's see. I'm not sure if there's a setting or some other thing going on over there. When you first log on, your mic kind of goes up and down to show that the mic is.
It is on.
Okay, I hear you now.
Okay. I am so sorry about that. That was on me, and I had my settings on just right, but when I turned on I have a little camera, and apparently it turned off my mic when I turned it on. A ring light.
You know, that technology thing is so crazy. It just kind of does what it does, and it always does it at the time that we least need it to do what it does. So I totally understand.
So much that I was like, I know it's on.
Right. It was good to see you again. Great seeing you at Alumni Weekend. I asked Darien at the very top of our conversation, same question I'm going to ask you right now. Generally, what was your experience like this year at homecoming?
Oh, Alumni was fabulous this year. We had a really wonderful time. I know you've talked about the fact that, we actually have 2 children there now. So we have a freshman and a 4th year who was going into her 5th and final year because she's a double major. But we always have a good time there. It wasn't one of our banner years. So in those years, you have fewer events and you're out and about and able to see people. So we love coming to Alumni. I think we've come almost every year, at least for the last 5 years.
Yeah. It was, for me, a great experience. Of course, I live in Huntsville, and I always tell people that the homecoming experience for me is always interesting. When I left Oakwood, I moved right back to Huntsville from New York City. I've been here for, forever now. And so I've seen a lot of homecoming weekends, and I engage in different kind of ways. But over the last couple of years, I feel like the energy has increased, and there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement, and people invested in the space of supporting the school. And that's just very exciting to see. So I'm just honored, as always, to be a part of that Oakwood family, as you are too, I know. You are an author as well. For His Glory, Disclosing and Destroying the Spiritual Roots of Codependency. Take a similar journey I did with Darien a few moments ago. Whenever I talk to an author, I'm always curious about the journey towards becoming an author. What inspired it? And then how did you land in the space that you landed with the decision to write on this particular topic?
Well, those are weighty questions. And for the first one, it's very simple. God said, write that down. I am a coach, but I was engaging in one-on-one coaching about 12 or 13 years ago, and I kept coming into the same problem. And when I say problem, I think anyone who exists in a coaching space, anyone who sells a product, a problem is a good thing, right? Because it gives you the avenue to provide a solution. But I kept coming into these young women and older women alike who would say, I want to do this, and I've tried to do this. And they couldn't tell me what was keeping them from getting to their next level. And I asked questions, and I would ask probing questions, and it would turn out that they were spending all of their time and all of their money doing. And this is what I was able to condense it to after going through this with about 6 clients, almost back to back. They were doing for others what those people should have been doing for themselves.
Wow.
And in that space, with that time, with that energy, with that money, they could have achieved their goals. And I recognized that it was indeed codependency. And the reason I was able to recognize that is, as I eventually wrote in the book, because I had been codependent. I'm the oldest of 6. And I was the family manager. I was the person people went to. I was the fixer. I did the things. And at a certain point, I had to learn what a boundary looked like. I had to sit my family down and say, I need to pay off my student loans. I need to get out of debt. I want to go to graduate school. I am moving across the country, right? Because I recognized that the entanglement and the enmeshment was not healthy. But I could never have done that if I had not gone to therapy. I had not had a very close friend who knew of a program called Codependent Anonymous, which is a 12-step program very similar to what they use in Alcoholics, Gambling, Narcotics Anonymous. And it talks about your role, your personal role in your recovery. And in many cases, it's easy to point fingers at other people. It's easy to say, oh, my family, oh, my husband, oh, this and oh, that. But it's much harder to acknowledge our role because we are very good at acknowledging our good intent. So what brought me to this book was recognizing that it was not just affecting women's ability to lead lives that evidence their full potential. It was also keeping people from living out the purpose that God created them for. It was keeping people from moving. The word tells us that the gospel must be preached in all the world, and then the end will come and not before. And I recognize that it's not just a woman issue either. I was primarily a coach who worked with women, but I see this with men as well. And what happens is we get busy and our lives get so full, and they're not always full of bad things. We're doing good things. We're making impact. Is it kingdom impact?
Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. You said so many things that I want to unpack. I'm going to start with just a whole note. I'm a mental health professional, by the way. So, I mean, you're speaking my language, you're singing my song. And so I'm just sitting here, enraptured by what you're saying, because it just makes so much sense and aligns so much with the kinds of experiences that I've had with others in my life and my work and my mission. Talk to me a little bit about the decision to go for counseling. It's something that was difficult for you, because oftentimes within the context of a person of faith, a lot of people give you different messages and different signals. And oftentimes the messages aren't coming from outside of us. They're internalized messages that keep us from seeking the help that we need. What was that decision like for you?
Well, I'll say this. I have always been I march to the beat of my own drum. So I went for therapy the first time when I was at Oakwood. They had mental health services available right there on campus, and I was dealing with a lot, and I marched right in. Now, caveat to that, I only went to 2 sessions. Unfortunately, the person that I was seeing knew my parents. My mother had gone to Oakwood, and there were a lot of questions. And I said, you know what? I don't think this is going to work for me. And I took a lunch break. However, I recognize that just like, and I'm grateful that in this time that we're living in, we have more pastors, more counselors in the church, more conference ministers, and more ministry leaders who are saying you can and should have Jesus and a therapist. Because back then, you're right, I had a lot of people saying to me who were in my life, that were why do you need to go to therapy? Well, what do you mean? Why are you going to therapy? You just need to pray. And I went to prayer meeting. I prayed. I read my Bible. God and we had a relationship, but I recognized that I would not lay in bed and pray with a toothache. I would not lay in bed and pray with a broken leg. So I'm not going to lay in bed and pray while my mental health struggles. I'm going to seek professional help. And God, I think it's very important. I pray before I choose doctors. I pray before I choose therapists. And I have talked to people in my community about what it looks like to properly vet a therapist, because you can end up in a space that will be more damaging than healing. However, there are bad seeds in every pot, and therapy should not be painted with a broad brush. It's just a tool.
Yeah. And it's an essential tool that can help people help themselves. They can help the circumstance that they're being confronted with. And I love what you said. I mean, you just said she's saying so much today, folks. I hope that you're listening to Naomi's testimony here, because that's really what this is, testimony. But she prays before she seeks the help, just like just like I believe that God has given certain people gifts in the medical profession. He's given certain people gifts in the areas of nutrition and lifestyle management. He's given people gifts in whatever the space might be, the industry might be. He's done that for people in psychology and wellness and mental health services. He's done the same thing. So pray and ask God to guide you to the person that you need to be guided to. But she also said another word for which she's going to get a big round of applause right now. And listen to that round of applause. She said the magic word. Sometimes on shows I used to say you get the magic word, it goes ding, 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 ding. You said boundaries. Oh my goodness. Talk to me a little bit about how you have defined the lack of boundaries in your life, perhaps, and how utilizing boundaries has, I believe, been transformational in your life.
So first things first, when I went to therapy, I had a therapist who asked me several questions, and the most transformative question, and the one that's in the book, is who are you waiting for? Not what. Who are you waiting for? I believe that boundaries allowed me to make space for what God wanted to do in my life. And what a boundary is something that is for me, that I put into place just like a tool to keep me moving in the direction of my dreams. See, many people are afraid of boundaries because they think boundaries are against other people. Boundaries are not against other people. Boundaries are for you. And so with the women that I coached, even within the book, when we're speaking about boundaries, we're not saying, oh, you won't speak to me like that. You won't call me and ask me for money that you don't pay back. We're saying what I will do. What will I do? If you call me and you speak to me disrespectfully, I can still be kind. I can say, hey, I appreciate that you're overwhelmed and you're dealing with a lot right now, but this is disrespectful to me. So unless you're able to speak to me respectfully, I have to end the call. And I can say that 2 or 3 times, and then I can say, I can see that you're too upset to continue. I'll talk to you later. That is not against someone else. That's for me.
How damaging can codependency be in a person's life as it relates to their family, their community, their job situation, academic environment? What's the risk involved with experiencing a codependent relationship?
Oh my goodness, that is a really deep question. So I give many examples in the book. A lot of them are around the spiritual roots, because that's what I talk about. For many, especially women growing up in faith traditions, not just the Adventist tradition, we have been raised to believe that our yes is godly. And that if anyone asks us to do something for God, which is for them, right? For the church, right? Then if we say no, we have violated our duty to God. And so what becomes damaging is we internalize people pleasing as God pleasing. And because it happens at such a young age for so many people, and it's not, like I said, it's not just women, however, that's who I've primarily worked with, it follows you. So you find it difficult to say no, to create good boundaries, right? So in workspaces, for example, people ask you to do things that you do not have the time, the energy, or the capacity for. You may not even have the training. I have a young woman in my book. This person could not say no. Could not. And what happens is you set yourself up for failure. Because you simply can't do, my tagline is this: you can do anything, but you cannot do everything. Choose wisely. And if you're very young in your career and you have 5 bosses and none of them talk to each other, you will be trying to do the work of 3 people if you do not learn boundaries. Have this assignment for this person. I have this assignment for this person, and they are due next week. Should I speak to them about reprioritizing that before I take yours on because I can't do all 3? These are conversations that our young people are not taught. And so it affects your credibility in the workspace when you say yes and you don't deliver. It affects your mental health when you get a bad review, when you have been pushing the bounds of exhaustion to complete things that were never possible in the time you had. And that goes for school as well. And these are things that I'm teaching my children, like your teachers aren't talking to each other. And they truly, honestly, I don't want to say don't care, but they care about their assignment, their coursework, and the students in their class. If you need an exception, that means you need to go talk to them.
I'm talking to Naomi Claxton this afternoon, Naomi Claxton, Esquire. She is the author of For His Glory, Disclosing and Destroying the Spiritual Roots of Codependency. We're having a great conversation, a very insightful conversation, and an in-depth conversation about the journey of codependency in people's lives. And I wanted to shift for just a moment and ask you a couple of questions about that specific experience. The first thing being that I would imagine a big part of the process of recovery, if you want to call it that, from codependency is first of all acknowledging it through awareness, to say, you come to some awareness that it's happening or some acceptance that it's happening. Talk to me a little bit about, in addition to, you mentioned boundaries, I know that's part of the journey. What are some of the other steps along the journey that a person is likely to encounter as they attempt to address the challenges posed in their life by codependency?
So I've broken it down to a 3-step framework. The first is self-awareness, recognizing where you are being affected by codependency in your relationships. And I give the examples of look at your money. Yeah. Look at your health. And look at your time, where you're spending your time. If you do an audit in these 3 areas, it will tell you, especially if you feel stressed about it and you don't want, it will tell you whether or not codependency exists in one or more of your relationships. Because you can show up without codependency in some relationships and in codependency in other relationships, because there are places that can be triggering. But for me, there are 3 areas. First is self-awareness, doing those audits. The second is self-differentiation. Once you determine which relationships you are currently experiencing or showing up in codependency with, and the thing is, codependency can be symbiotic. So you can be codependent in a relationship with someone who is also codependent. So you're showing up in a way that to you doesn't look like codependency, because it's like control. It's more like manipulation. It's more like you trying to get this person to do what you want them to do, which is a little bit different, right, than the codependency of being the people pleaser. But it's codependency. So self-differentiation asks you to look at, where is my view of myself tied to what another person thinks of me? Where am I enmeshed? And as a mental health professional, you've probably seen a lot of people who are so enmeshed in their family relationships, they cannot see it. And it may take, sometimes years of sessions for them to document the patterns that enable them to simply acknowledge enmeshment. So 1 is self-awareness, 2 is self-differentiation, and only then can you start crafting small but necessary boundaries to start to shift your relationship, because the boundaries, again, are for you. When you start, there are people who have said, I have been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing this for 30 years. I can't stop now. When you start setting boundaries, it is very difficult. And it doesn't just challenge what other people think of you. It challenges what you think of you. And that's why many people abandon it. Sometimes they are enmeshed in relationships they don't want to be enmeshed with. You know, people throw around narcissism all the time, but when you have a narcissistic partner or a narcissistic spouse for real, setting those boundaries is hard because there's going to be raging and pushing back. There's going to be gaslighting. There's going to be manipulation. There's going to be all kinds of, and so recognizing it first. Where am I showing up in this way? How am I so tied to this person's view of me that I am unable to see myself as God created me to be? And 3, what small steps? Usually, sometimes there can only be one boundary, sometimes, because the boundary has to start with taking a pause. This is the very first one I give people: pause and pray before you say yes, before you spend money, depending on what that relationship is. You know, if you have a boss that's really, really manipulative and trying to get you to do their whole job, pause and pray. I'm going to review what I have on my plate for this week, and I'll get back with you. And we just practice small things, sentences that you can repeat, because boundaries don't just exist in a vacuum. You have to be comfortable with them, and they have to be able to make a change in your life. So one size fits all boundaries don't exist.
I am possibly going to do something that I shouldn't have done because there are about 5 minutes left, but I'm going to do it anyway because I think you'll be able to handle it. I want to ask you this question. What have you given any consideration as to the role of faith and one's upbringing in the development of the codependent personality?
I have. That's actually the focus of the book in many ways. Most of the women that I've worked with have been women of faith. And as I spoke about earlier, tying a yes at church, a yes to our parents, a yes to the pastor, a yes to the ministry leader, to a yes to God, can create a pattern by which, by the time a child is an adult, they simply feel as though being useful and being helpful is their whole purpose. And Paul says we should all desire the greater gifts. If we know the spiritual gifts, then we know helps is one. Administration is one. But there are many gifts. And there are people who are being tied to a lower level than where God has called them to operate because they have expanded to doing things that God hasn't called them to do, but they feel powerless to say no to do. But the harm that causes isn't limited to ministry. The effect on the kingdom is real, but it also affects your marriages, your relationships, and your career prospects. If you are not able to advocate for yourself and show up fully as yourself, you settle for lower quality relationships. You do not advance in your career because you cannot advocate for yourself. And in many cases, your integrity is undermined when you are saying yes to things that are not possible. And when all is said and done, the best relationships require boundaries. Because if you never show up as your full self, if you're never able to say, no, this is not who I am, this is not what I want, you're never being authentic. And so you do not attract your authentic friends. And the truth is, there are people losing friendships, relationships, and marriages in their 50s and 60s because they're finally saying, this is not who I am. Wow. But they could have been walking in that truth 20, 30, 40 years earlier.
We've got maybe 3 minutes left in the broadcast, and I want to give people a chance to know how they can learn more about the work that you're doing and also maybe get a copy of the book. I want to ask, though, as I'm asking that, and you can summarize this all together, is finding help as simple as reaching out to you, a person who's doing these kinds of support groups? Is it as simple as dialing up Codependence Anonymous? Is it a Google issue? Somebody goes on and just Google some names and some ideas. What's the process of getting help for somebody listening this afternoon that says, I want to look into this more?
So it depends on the effect that it's having. If there's someone who's just curious, I say get a copy of my book. My book is at howtochick.com/glory. And that's how, the number 2, chick, CHICK.com/glory. You can download the first 3 days for free and do that work. That is also my website, www.thehowtochick.com. However, if you have never been in therapy and you are looking for a therapist, I do recommend just going online and looking for therapists that specialize in self-differentiation. Because that is really the key to freedom from codependency. If you do not have mental health care available to you under your insurance, or you're not sure you can afford it, or you simply can't find anyone in your area that meshes with you, I do recommend Codependence Anonymous because they have virtual meetings. You can find one that fits with your schedule. You can, if you are a person who likes to meet in person, you can also find those who meet in person. However, be aware that these are facilitated by laypersons. So not everyone is the same. And I want to give that disclaimer. Please do not quit if your first therapist isn't good. I've gone through. Please do not quit if that CODA group has some abrasive people in it. It happens. People are people, and people show up as people wherever they are. Do not let go until you get the freedom that you are seeking.
That is fantastic counsel from a counsel in the context of this very, very challenging experience of codependency. It's a lot more common than people know because people don't always know how to name it. And I think you've done a great job of helping us navigate through the journey of one who may have this, coming from your own background, experiences, writing the book, and now being a resource to others. Naomi Claxton, you've been awesome for us today, and we certainly appreciate you coming on and sharing. I hope you'll come back and share more with us as time goes forward. We want to definitely lean on our resident experts and authors in various areas, and hopefully they can further enrich the conversation on this broadcast. So thank you for joining me this afternoon and taking this time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
All right. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. What a great way to end the dialogue with all of these great folks that have been with me today. They've been amazing guests. They just simply enrich the quality of this broadcast, beginning with Anthony Daniels, the minority leader for the Alabama House of Representatives, District 53, joining me on this afternoon. What an amazing conversation with him, talking about the current political landscape, the gerrymandering challenges, and so much more. We were vibing off of the Heat Thrives men's gathering that took place on yesterday here in Huntsville with some of the participants. Adrian Hargrove, Regional Director, Boys and Girls Clubs of North Alabama, and author of the book, The Courage to Cry. Lawrence Souffrant LLC of Lawrence Souffrant LLC, a life coach and professional speaker, joining us this afternoon, and also Lorenzo Wright, co-founder of the Right Way 360 Wealth Group, joining us on this afternoon as they were presenters at the event on yesterday. Author Darien Claxton, Subdue the Enemy Under Your Feet, Eliminating Spiritual Strongholds that Hamper Your Health, Money, and Relationships with God and Others, and his wife, Naomi Claxton, joining us. She's also an author, For His Glory, Disclosing and Destroying the Spiritual Roots of Codependency. Folks, we had some really, really rich conversations on this afternoon. On next week, my guest will be our friends from the Alabama Nonviolent Offenders Organization, Mr. Lee Langston, Interim Executive Director of the organization, and perhaps some others will join us for a conversation about all the great work that they're doing on the ground right now. Dr. Noskeri Thomas, the author of Manifestation Mastery, A Biblical Approach to Realizing Abundance, Purpose, and Divine Favor, will join me for a conversation about those who have read the book, or with those who have read the book. Dr. Sidney Freeman and Dr. Beverly Robinson will join us. And then we've got some more folks coming on as well. We'll announce that in a very short time from now. In the meantime, I hope that you have a great rest of the week. It is always my privilege and pleasure to be here for the broadcast. I'm Kenny Anderson, host and producer of the Second Chance radio broadcast, originating from the Oakwood University campus since the fall of 1990. And we're still here. And we're not going anywhere anytime soon. We're grateful that you've taken this time to be with us on this afternoon. And I look forward to having a conversation again with you sometime in the very near future. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk soon. Good day.
Thank you for tuning in to Second Chance. We hope that the information that was shared has been a blessing to you and that your life will be enriched as a result of it. We'd love to hear from you. So please send your email comments to Kenneth Anderson at mxlife@aol.com. That's mxlife@aol.com. And check out our Facebook page, 2ND Chance. That's 2ND Chance. In the meantime, have a great week, and we'll talk to you again next week. Good day.